Good evening, one and all. Good evening to our viewers. And let's give credit firstly to the GlobeSpan team, to all of our team from GlobeSpan, Devin Bissoon, of course, Nohar Singh, and all the rest working hard behind the scenes to make our continued elections coverage as a possibility. Gentlemen, ladies, brothers and sisters across Guyana and the diaspora, I'm sure that every person is a little tense at this moment, wondering when we are going to get results. Unfortunately, the latest position out of GECOM is one of having no position at all. They are unable to say when they can declare the results of the elections. They are unable to say, at what precise moment they will be ready to deliver the total final results. We expect sometime tonight for them to give a halfway position, but it doesn't do anything good to lift the tensions across the country, as everybody is kind of carrying on about their numbers. So just to let viewers know, here is what we have. We have a situation where videos are circulating all across. People are seeing things, videos are going. We saw a video of purportedly showing some GECOM persons or some polling officers or whoever they are rifling through envelopes. We really do not pay heed much to them, because at this stage, I wish to remind everyone, no one can do anything with a statement of polls, because signed copies of those statement of polls would have been with the political parties as well as with GECOM. So try as whoever might in terms of whether it's mischief, whether it's something that very innocent, we will wait and see. The other thing I'd like to alert viewers out there is that everybody wants to know the results. I think our panelists tonight, and we have two gentlemen who have been experienced in following elections, not just this time, but in the past. Dr. Rose has been part of the campaign actively and physically years ago in Guyana. And Charles has also been, in the US, but being closely affiliated and associated. And they too will give their opinion. Later tonight, we hope to be joined by David Hinds. We hope to be joined by Johnson. We hope to be joined by Brian from Max Media and a number of other persons to give us updates. But to our panelists tonight, gentlemen, welcome. And I think the word out is that there are no results as yet, no credible results that anyone could depend on. Your thoughts?
I know. Thank you again, Yoke, for having us tonight. To all our viewers at home and around the globe. Like Yoke just said, we are all awaiting with bated breath the Elections Commission declaring the results. We know it's very challenging, and especially in a society like ours where rumors spread so fast and people get agitated because it's kind of winner take all politics as we know we have. I'm appealing to all Guyanese at home and abroad, stay calm, stay peaceful. Everyone, the political parties who contest the election, the leaders, I'm sure they're also waiting for the results to be declared. All the voters who joined those long queues and stayed in the hot sun, it was hot yesterday, I'm told, and voted. You need to get credit for that. But we need to stay calm and peaceful, knowing that the Elections Commission, with all the, whatever we want to say, they might not be, doing everything right. I think they're doing everything that is within their power to ensure that when they declare the results of the elections, they are free and fair and actually accurate. The fact today, when I listened to the CEO at GECOM, I kind of sensed that some of the presiding officers, they didn't follow instructions as they were told. Maybe it's whatever caused it. They put statement of polls in the ballot box rather than give it to the deputy returning officer, and that creates some problem. They couldn't get all the official statement of polls, and those things do cause problem within GECOM. So there are some shortcomings. So again, as Dr. Mahadeo mentioned, I'm appealing again to all our people in Guyana and around the world. Be calm, be patient. GECOM, I'm sure, will do their best to give us the results as soon as it's practicable possible. And I hope maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, so we can have whoever wins the election, the new president can be sworn in, hopefully by the end of this week.
I would like to add to that too by saying that all should remain relatively calm until the elections are published. And whosoever wins, no one should get involved in any physical alteration or violence or anything of the sort. We have moved past that years ago. But I must give GECOM a lot of credit because they've conducted a very good election. It was free from any major disturbances, and that's one thing I should say GECOM need to be complimented on. But the other thing is that the slowness of getting the results out, that has to be improved. People should not wait 2 or 3 days to know who wins an election. Guyana is very tense right now from what I was made to understand. And that tenseness could create even more problems for the political parties and for the people in general. So if the election results come out very fast, that would ease the tension and people will be able to move on with their lives, accept whosoever will form the new government and move on with their lives. So again, I will go out on a limb and recommend what they call voting machines. That is urgently needed in Guyana right now. And that will be a sign of marked development.
Dr. Rose, so here are a couple of the contentious issues, and you mentioned voting machines. Now, here is a problem. So the international observers have literally slapped GECOM on the wrist because the last election, they made certain recommendations that GECOM chose to ignore. Today's press conference, GECOM CEO was heard saying, well, they don't have to accept any and all recommendations. He's right. But at least you should filter and accept those that would place Guyana in a higher degree of respectability. Your thoughts?
I agree with that. At least they have to move ahead and get things done very fast. We're in a technological world today, and Guyana cannot be left back. As I said, voting machines will be one of the first signs of modernization in Guyana or development, because you have moved from counting the ballots physically to a voting equipment that will spit out the results to you instantly. And that will be beneficial to all the people in Guyana. So GECOM of itself ought to know, and even though he said, Mr. Lowenfield said so and so, it is just sheer arrogance. You ought to know what's good for the country and what's good for the development of the country and what's good for the people.
And when I heard, Charles, just before you, when I heard Lowenfield today, I must be honest with you, I don't mean to knock the guy. I don't mean to beat up on the guy, but I must be honest with you. I shuddered. You know why? 2 reasons. A year ago, they told the CCJ they ain't going to be ready. One has to wonder whether it was ready for election or ready to announce the result. But 2, you're a manager. You need to have all resources in place, because you know what else he said today, Charles? He said, had they foreseen the tediousness of the process? You know, and I found that astounding. I can't describe that comment. A manager is saying, that's why you're a manager, to foresee hurdles and plan contingencies.
And Yog, when I heard that statement today, the same thing you talk about, I said to myself, I think Mr. Lowenfield, they should come to an end. When he made that statement, I said, is this guy for real? Now the thing is with GECOM, we know it's an independent commission. Now the commission is actually, the mandate is given by the 6 commissioners and the chairman to the officers, of which the CEO is the head of the officers. Now, is Mr. Lowenfield independent once the mandate is given, or does he have to go to the commissioners to get permission to do that? That I don't know. If he went to the commissioners, and he was saying today that he don't have to accept all recommendation, and that is true. But I mean, if you're, as you said, you were a CEO at one time at a company, And you know exactly, you look forward in your budget, in your planning. This is where you are, this is where you want to be, this is where you have to do to get there. And I don't think Mr. Lowenfield has been able to, kind of sort that out, of saying, okay, since 1992 elections, we know that election, I was in Georgetown then, and I know that when it was in Brickdam, I think, was that the commission was in Brickdam, when it was stoned by the the then government supporters. That election took a couple of days to be declared, and subsequent election it takes. I mean, I know Steve Serge Bally, the last chairman, he was he was saying out of abundance of caution, they're delaying the result until they get everything right, and that's the problem, because if you declare it and one party doesn't like what happened, then it becomes an issue. And so the Elections Commission is really between a rock and a hard place. And I really, I don't envy the work that the guys do there. I think they're doing a good job. I listened to the PRO. I think she is very articulate in what she said. I think her presentation was excellent. But having said that, when I hear presiding officers cannot follow simple instructions, then what Dr. Rose said about let us go to that electronic means of communicating the ballot. And we can, it's very simple machines. We can have the hard copy the ballots, go and vote in your ballot, scan it in the machine, that hard copy is there for the record. So in case you need a recount, you have the hard copy. And then those information is now transmitted to GECOM. Forget about the returning officers, straight to GECOM. So by midnight, they can get the result, even before then. I know he was kind of upset when the Trinidadian guy asked him about Trinidad elections being, results are so, early. I think he was kind of getting a bit, upset about that, which is really sad. But I think Mr. Lowenfield, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think I don't see him having a vision to make GECOM very equipped to give results, at the earliest possible time. And my humble opinion is after this election is declared, he should step down unless somebody else takes over.
If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Mohammed, is he a political appointee? Right. Is he a political appointee?
Well, by the time you're getting on to Dr. Yoga again, just cut
Yeah.
off. When I see his when I look at his demeanor today, as he was talking to the press, and I think the press did ask him some serious questions. I think his demeanor give me the indication that he's not an apolitical person. And I believe, like all, especially GECOM, but all commissions, they should be free of political bias. And I'm not saying Mr. Lowenfield is that way, but the way he sounded and the way he looked in that press conference today, he seems to be a little biased in terms of he's not liking what he's seeing. If that opinion is correct, I don't believe that should be the face of an independent GECOM, where whoever wins the election, I really don't care if APNU is re-elected or the PEP wins. That is not relevant to the workers of the Elections Commission. Their job is to, have an election and ensure you have a free and fair election. The chairman said it was free and fair. It was peaceful yesterday. GECOM needs especially great credit for that. But having said that, the chief elections officer should be a person who, regardless of who wins, his demeanor should be the same. And I didn't see that in Mr. Lowenfield
As a matter of
today.
fact, all employees of GECOM should be impartial. You just cannot take sides in an election. You let the chips fall where they may. Who wins, wins. Who loses, loses. And that's something that got to be inculcated in Guyana, to let people know that I am appointed to this position. I'm not going to take sides. But the thing is with Mr. Lowenfield and many others in Guyana, this is an important issue. Whenever they face the press and they're being asked questions, they get annoyed with the press. And I don't understand. they should go there fully prepared to answer any and every question. But I saw him today, like he was annoyed questions or certain questions being asked of him. And I'm saying, why would you want to face the press then? Just give a statement and get off and get back to your office. But if you face the press, you should expect questions that will not be popular to you or not what you want to hear, but you should be able to respond. And in responding, you're dealing with people and you're letting them know what is going on or what is taking place. But to be upset with the press, I think it's a common trait among a lot of Guyanese politicians, all of them, and I don't know for what reason.
And that's a very valid point. And as a matter of fact, again, you come back to the same point. The elections officer, and especially chief election officer, should be a neutral person. So if you're tabulating the result and you're not liking what you're seeing, then that trigger off that kind of attitude, that when the press asks you questions, you're kind of defensive because you don't want to really answer the question that is posed by the press. And I think the press did ask some really wonderful questions today. And I'm hoping that, as I said, I think Mr. Lowenfield, I think he's a good man. I don't think anybody has problem with him. But I think for the position of Chief Executive Officer of GECOM, I think he appears to be too political to be in that position. I think you need a neutral person, someone who, regardless of who win or who lose, the presentation of GECOM officials should be as neutral as possible.
But the question is, who is neutral in Guyana?
Oh, there are a lot of neutral people still. Don't discard Guyanese.
But would they want to take that position though?
I'm
That's
sure.
the question.
I'm available.
No, but the thing is that most people in Guyana, from what I gather, I think close to about 70% are aligned to one political party or another. And that being the case, it's hard to find neutral people. But they can be trained or be inculcated to know that this position here, you have to be neutral. You have to be impartial. You can have all your party affiliations, but when you're dealing with being a part of GECOM as the CEO, you have to show total neutrality, or else you should not accept the job, or you should not be in that position.
You know, Doc, and that's a really great point. Actually, when I was doing this presentation for reforming our constitution, I said in one of those presentations that any Guyanese who wants to be president, for instance, there should be a school within Guyana, training area, for people to be trained for the function of performing the duties of president. The same thing, people should be trained to perform the function of prime minister. People should be trained to perform the function of a minister or a member of parliament. And there should be many people who are trained for that, including who want to be trained to be the chief executive officer of GECOM. There should be hundreds of people trained, and guess what? Everyone should do a test, and those who, well, first the qualification, an exam, and then a panel, an interviewing panel, and those who are competent and who is unbiased. You need people of independent who can, administer these entities. And there are people in Guyana. I am proud of being Guyanese. I am proud that there are people in Guyana who are still very independent, even though they have a political leaning. That's okay. Here in the United States, the president nominates judges. Guess what? The Senate will approve or confirm those judges. But guess when these judges go to the bench, in more cases than not, they rule in favor of how the president thinks, because in the same league, you're either a Republican or a liberal. Similarly, it's not that they're not professional, but that's how they think. In Guyana, we have that problem where people are too overboard in terms of who they support. And when these are the people who are running independent commissions like GECOM, it is a cause for concern. And I think we need to put a stop to that.
That's a good point. But training of itself, what will the training do? The training will teach them to be impartial. They have to be impartial. And given the position, this should be told to them. Impartiality should be criteria number one for any position at GECOM. I think all the GECOM staff should be impartial, except for the commissioners. And they should be independent as well. But the parties appoint them, so they will not be independent. But I think everyone at GECOM should be impartial. What do you say, Dr. Mahathir?
Right. Well, I'm back. I'm sorry. It seems to be some bit of internet connections.
Right, right.
I guess we have a little bit of an issue here. But yes, indeed, GCOM should be totally impartial. Look, by law, GCOM is mandated to do certain things. GCOM is mandated to be prepared for elections. GCOM is mandated to ensure that checks and balances are in place for a timely announcement or timely declaration of the winner. Whether they have prepared themselves in all logistical way for that, today we see that we can question that they're not prepared. However, look, I don't know what are your thoughts on this, gentlemen. Isn't it true that regardless of what APNU AFC is posting and what PPPC is posting, that both parties know who is the winner? Look, in any other developed country, in any developed country in the world, one would be calling the other and say, we concede.
That is true. That is true. And that's a courtesy and that's a dignified thing to do. But in Guyana, it is. But you know something? It happens in Trinidad. It happens in Jamaica as well. I'm not sure it happened in Barbados in the last election. But in Guyana, I don't think any party, any leader of the parties will call the others and concede and wish them well in office. As a matter of fact, they would prefer to stage a fight in order to retain office, go to the courts and clog the court system just to appease their constituents that we are fighting for you and
Correct.
we did not lose the election. Because after put out a statement today, President Granger said no one should put out a statement that they won the election. GECOM should be the one to do that. And yet I saw a statement came from APNU today saying that they're going to be, based on projections, they're going to be returning to office.
I know,
now, what projections?
Yeah,
I don't even know.
That's very, that's the problem we have with President Granger. And not that I'm bashing President Granger, but he's saying one thing and he's doing something else. And I don't want to appear to bash Mr. Lowingfield. Just to remind our viewers that when Mr. Gokul was there were reports that he was biased towards in favor of the PPP. And that's the problem with GECOM. You need independent-minded people who will be free and fair and who will present the facts as they are without the need to determine if my party win or my party lose. No party should be yours. You can vote whoever you want. That's your right. But don't bring that into your job as CEO at especially an institution like GECOM. And talking about parties calling each other, I wish that could have happened. I mean, right here in the U.S., it's all the time. One candidate call the other candidate, conceding defeat, congratulating them, and then move on. That is, I think.
Look, even today, right? And yesterday, today is your Super Tuesday. Yesterday, day before, two of you guys dropped out, but they immediately endorsed another. They moved on.
Right.
They moved out and on. So I find, but viewers out there should know, look, the truth is that the two main political players in Guyana, the PPPC and APNU AFC, they receive a signed copy of all the statement of polls. So the truth is, those two parties, they know who has won and who has lost. All this little tidbits of things about 126 days and 156 days is, in my view, utter nonsense.
I agree with that because both parties, I was told since around 10 this morning, they tabulated the results overnight and they got the results. They know who won and they know who lost. Because I was given the results since 10 o'clock this morning. And if I can be given the results, I'm not saying I believe the results, but if one party is telling me that they got X amount of votes and the other party should have X amount of votes, then both parties know. All the agents at least send that statement of poll to them. So they ought to know it, and they're just being in denial.
And I wish our politicians can be more mature, and this is so true in that all the APNU and the PPP have all the statement of polls. They had polling agent right across Guyana, so they have all the statement. They would have tabulated their statement, and they know exactly what is what. Now, We don't know that because GECOM has not presented that as yet. But what I'm saying is this
Correct.
to my Guyanese people and to our politicians. This is a game we just played. And we are lovers of cricket. We know we support the West Indies team even when they get defeat and they get whitewashed. But the thing is this, in the game of cricket, there is one loser and there is one winner. Both persons don't win, except there's a tie match, which is very, very rare in the history of cricket. So the thing is, in the elections, we can look at it the same way. One team will win, the other team will lose. My expectation and my prayer is that the team that wins do not govern the country as if the other side have no say. And that has been our problem for the last 53 years, is that
Correct.
whoever wins, they take the entire prize and half of the country is locked out. We cannot develop the country like that. So my appeal to whoever win this election, please take a look, stop, change direction, govern the country as if you're the president for all of Guyana. Because indeed,
Correct.
you are the president of all of Guyana, not only your supporters. So please ensure that all Guyanese have a fair share in whatever the administration will do for the people of our country.
And I echo those sentiments, but I will say this to you, Professor Charles, that the Guyanese politicians, they are mature, but the problem is that they don't act maturely. That is their problem. They act as
Correct.
amateurish people. They just don't want to recognize each other and give each other praise for what they're doing. If it's good, something, they don't do it. Everything one party does, even though some things are good, the other party criticizes, no matter what it is. And they've got to get out of that,
Correct.
that psychic and give Jack his jacket, you know.
Well, let's not
That's
bash our
true. Well,
politicians. Sorry, Doc, if you don't mind, sorry, don't bash you, but right here in the United States, if President Trump can cure cancer today, they will still bash him and say that is a bad thing he did. So the thing is, the same thing in America, the same thing happen around the world. Guyana is no exception. We would like politicians to be, receptive and say, what, great job you guys did, but they're supporting and say, why did you do that? You were not supposed to compliment the guy. You're supposed to bash him. And that's the kind of politics.
Right.
In other words, they play to their own
So,
constituents.
gentlemen, and viewers out there, let's welcome Dr. David Hinds, who has taken some time amidst what they have to do to join us tonight to discuss, how the state of play in Guyana. Dr. Hinds, welcome to our panel.
Thank you much, Dr. Mahadio. Good night.
Good night,
Good
Doc.
night.
How you doing?
Well, we had a nice, albeit brief, discussions thus far. We have respectfully paid heed to GECOM's declaration that there is no declaration as yet until due process is completed. Dr. Hinds, I would love to have your thoughts on this, and I'm going to throw you a hard one quickly. The notion all around the country is that the PPPC and the APNU AFC, both parties know exactly who has won. Why can't one call the other and say, hey, let's move on?
It's not part of the political culture. It's as simple as that. They are going to wait until the last minute and see what plays out. Because remember, the period until the final results are declared is a period for both parties to leave their supporters in suspense. And at the end of the day, the one that loses, obviously, their supporters are going to be disgruntled. And so therefore, the fact that they're not calling each other is that they're leaving space for perhaps protest after the elections, challenging the elections results.
But Dr. Hinds, is that something good? Because
Dr. Hinds, sorry, Dr. Rose. So, Dr. Hinds, here is your point is well taken, and the truth is that one of the things viewers should remember is that this period also allows there's a critical period here. This gap also allows the two parties, or the contesting parties, in other words, as they receive the results, to immediately demand or immediately challenge any of those districts or any of those polling areas for whether they want to recount or so. So it's supposed to be an interactive process that allows the political parties to have a say in the game. Dr. Hinds, I want to ask you this question. A lot of people, yours truly included, have a lot of respect for you. They see you not just as an advocate for political rightness, but also as an advocate for a fair state of play in not just today's Guyana, but future Guyana. Do you think at this stage, Dr. David Hinds could say one party has won or one has lost?
No, I can't say that, because to say that is to throw fuel into the fire. We have to hope that despite the results, that both parties win and that Guyana win. It means that we have to create the kind of context and the kind of atmosphere where both parties, whether they come out second or first, would feel that they are not locked out. And I think people like myself ought to stay away from the winning and losing. Leave that for the party people. I was listening to Dr. Rose and Dr. Sugrim just now, and I was thinking that, look, politicians will do what politicians will do. That has been so from the time you've had competitive elections. And I think we have spent too much time trying to reform politicians and not going to be reformed. In my life, I have seen political leaders get worse and worse. And so there's no hope there. I think what we have to do is to create the kind of Guyanese citizen who will demand integrity and demand decency. And I think we have ceded too much space to the politicians. What am I saying? I'm saying that the Guyanese person has multiple instincts. They have the tribal political instinct, they have the ethnic instinct, but they also have that reasonable instinct. That instinct that says, look, Guyana belongs to all of us, and regardless of our differences, we have to make this work. I think we don't appeal enough to that side of our instinct. And so my view is that once these elections are over, we who call ourselves activists and so on have to reclaim some of that space that we've given politicians. And that is why I've said that I did not vote yesterday for a party. I vote for political space so that we can create the kind of Guyana we all hope for. Or else, with this oil and gas that come here, it would be fuel to dump us in the sea rather than to bring benefits to the nation.
Absolutely. And to our viewers out there, let me just inform you that Dr. Hinds and yours truly, we are in Guyana, and we are going to be joined later on by more and more persons who are observing Guyana. Our brothers, Charles and Dr. Rose, they are in the US at this moment. So to your question as to where the panelists are from, I hope that answers. Charles, you were saying?
Yeah, Dr. Rose, Dr. Hinds, sorry. I'm glad you bestowed upon me a doctorate. I'm not a doctor. I know we have Dr. Mahadev, we have you, and we have Dr. Rose. So we have 3 doctors in the house. I'm in your profession as well. I lecture in college here, and Dr. Rose lecture, and you also, I know, lecture in colleges here in the US. But the thing is, I like your opening statement. Before I say that, let me say this. I do like your analysis. I do read your analysis, and I think they're very frank and open. I don't necessarily always agree with your analysis, but that's a different situation. What I like what you just said is that there should be no winners and losers. There should be win and win. And that's what we were discussing earlier, that whoever wins this election, they should not see the other side as losing. And the other side must also not see themselves as losing either. Now, how will that play out is how the governance of the country is done. And my question to you, Dr. Hinds, is this. I know you supported the coalition. Have you considered in your earthly life at one time to be join forces with the PPP instead?
Never.
Once the PPP declares itself in good faith that it is interested in coalition politics, genuine coalition politics, my attitude to the PPP will change. Let me say the party to which I belong had a long association with the PPP when we were fighting the PNC. We were both committed to the WP and the PPP for government of national unity and reconstruction. Since 1992, the PPP got power, and you know what happens when people get power, all right? So association with the PPP is nothing new to people like myself. We have had that alliance before. And so let me repeat, a PPP that it is genuinely interested in getting on a path to national unity, meaning coalition politics, not the politics that I must join you, right, but that you and I must be part of a partnership. However lopsided the partnership is, because the PPP is a big party, the PNC is a big party, and we have to recognize that reality, right? If you join me to the WPA or the AFC, I say, go ahead. Go ahead.
So here's what I wanted to bring you back to the GECOM scenario. So what are your? I understand we need to be patient on the pay heed to the process. But what are your thoughts with regards to after 54 years, after a number of elections in Guyana, for the efficiency, the efficacy of GECOM as a constitutional body?
Yes, we certainly have to look at that. We have to try more to make a body like GECOM much more professional, much more non-partisan. I think the problem with GECOM is that it's a partisan body. I mean, there are two power brokers in GECOM. The chairperson is a human being. Is an individual. It's a Guyanese that lives in a Guyanese environment. And I say no more, right? And you have three commissioners from both sides who, in a sense, have veto powers, all right? Because if the chairman decides that he or she is not going to exercise the casting vote, in effect, what you have is two sides holding us to ransom. So that model of the political GECOM has to go. And we have to create a kind of institution that is much more professional and non-partisan. It is never going to be non-political, but non-partisan. The question is this: do we have enough people in the Guyanese society who would say, look, I support the PPP, I support the PNC, but once I sit as a GECOM commissioner, I am a Guyanese, and I will exercise my right as a Guyanese. That is, do we have the kind of citizen who is going to be able to balance their partisan affiliation with their duty to country? My sense is that we don't quite have that citizen yet, but we have to try in the short order to create that citizen. Only when we create that citizen can we have a non-partisan people.
Dr. Hinds,
right.
Yes,
go on.
I want to say this. That model of GECOM was created in 1992 by the Carter Center. And like you thought that should have been there should have been changes many years ago, because it cannot work. Too many politics are taking place in GECOM, and that model has to go. But Dr. Hinds, my question to you, you spoke about coalition politics. Coalition politics in Ghana do not evolve that well. We saw it in 1964 with the United Force. We saw what happened. Now we're seeing it with the AFC, WPA, and all the parties, where they actually be marginalized in a coalition of making decisions. So where do coalition goes in order to have a meaningful say? The WPA has no say, you might not like the statement, in this coalition government in formulating any policy. I have more than a single policy promulgated by the coalition, by the WPA, not even the AFC. So my point is coalition politics good?
Yeah.
But before Dr. Hinds answers that question, in addition to that, Dr. Hinds, how do you see a coalition? What should ideal situation for a coalition in terms of running the country, based on what Dr.
But hold on. So
before
before we discuss coalition politics, I must say that to Dr. Hinds' credit, Doc, I'm not taking words out of your mouth, but he did write some, I would say, beautiful pieces. I've read them, and they're good, solid reasoning of why he chooses to take this particular line. So that it's almost like as if, and Doc, you will speak now, it's almost like as if a passive resistance while moving ahead. Doc, to you.
Yes. I would like to think of myself as an old school revolutionary. And revolutionaries usually look for whatever space there is to work in. The revolution doesn't come overnight. You have to work towards a revolution. You have to look to see what space there is so you can advance your politics. And that is how I see the coalition. You're right. Coalitions are by their very nature unstable, but they offer you more space than the one-party government. And we have to see it that way. And as I continue to argue, something works if the people want it to work. You know, we have to keep educating our society. On the platform, on the coalition platform, whenever I had the opportunity to speak, I was very frank with the supporters of the coalition. I said, I don't come here to tell you lies, because you can look around in your community and see that your roads weren't done and your lights weren't done. So I'm asking you to vote for this coalition, not because it was perfect, but in spite of its imperfection. It was a different kind of rhetoric on the platform. But because we are part of the coalition, I got the chance to inject that message in the conversation. If we were outside of the coalition, we would not have that voice. And so one has to be pragmatic as you go forward. So you're fighting to win an election, but in the process, you are also fighting to influence minds towards a new politics. And so I am not letting any tales out of school if I say that as part of the coalition, persons like myself and the WP are using the opportunity to advance a new politics. But doing so not outside of the belly of the beast, which we did for a number of years, and people only remember us for that. I would like also that in a period when the politics of fighting the beast as a gorilla is over, you now have to go inside the belly of the beast and try to deal with the problem from there.
Right. So, Dr. Hinds, let's turn our attention back to the elections itself. Let me welcome our other two guests on the show. So we have our panel return from last night, and we're having more members tonight. Dr. Hinds, here is my question to you. Now, if you recall a couple of weeks back when we had the chat, and with other guests on this show, I would have asked the question from an interested or disinterested party in terms of politics of Guyana. The question has been that government ministers, well, not ministers, but government officers that continue to hold and use state assets leading up to elections. Now, the situation you have is that a lot of people have sent me questions to say, Yog, what is happening with the people who hold on to state asset as of today if tomorrow they lose the election? Will it be, is it those persons, it's incumbent on them to hand over, or what's the state of play? I know it's too early to call on these things, but to ease people's minds, I would like you to echo or agree or disagree. What I'm saying to people out there is that, look, process has to be worked out. I think at the end of the day, they're winners and they are winners. There are no losers here because, as Charles rightly said, whoever loses the presidency or the majority in parliament still maintains half of the population as support. So there will be mechanisms to hand over and take over, and I'm sure if that is the case, it could happen smoothly. But people are concerned with the integrity and sanctity of offices and assets at this time.
Yes, and they have a right to be concerned. But let me say this. I interact with persons in this coalition informally because I'm not part of the formal apparatus. And I can tell you that they are divided views on the use of state assets, and they not all. I would say the majority of the top officials are against and were against the use of state assets. I've heard the president himself come down very hard against the use of state assets. So I want to say, yes, in the election season, we tend to paint with a broad brush. But I'm taking my own, if it means anything, my own integrity here by saying that it is not as bad as it looks from the outside. Yes, there was use of state assets, but there were people in the leadership, there are people in the leadership who were sternly against it.
Okay, so again, over to our gentleman in studio there. But my last question to you, Doc, is in terms of the results. Here is an interesting perspective. If the incumbent loses, if the current government loses power, and there is a challenge in the courts. Prohibiting, because remember Janet Jagan time, there was an injunction prohibiting the swearing in of the president. If there is such an action, the Constitution says that the president remains president until a new president is sworn in. But Dr. Rose has opined that that is not so. As long as GECOM declares a winner, there's supposed to be change. What are your thoughts?
Yes, the latter. I think I am for the latter interpretation. Once GECOM declares a winner, and then it is incumbent on the authorities to swear in that person. Whatever challenge you are going to make to that person being in office does not prevent that person from going there. So I am of the latter view, and I hope we don't get to that point where people are prevented from being sworn in. I think once GECOM declares the results, if you are against the result, go to court. That's what judicial review says. Go to court. But in the meantime, I think the declared winner should take office.
It happened in 2015 when the PP had an injunction against the government. But GECOM declared APNU the winner, and the PP had to evacuate office. So I don't see why it will not happen this time. And since GECOM is an independent body, given the responsibility to govern the elections and to declare a winner, then it should be respected. That's all I'm saying. Okay. No government or no president can say, I will want to remain in power because I am challenging the election. He is going beyond the constitutional boundaries, far beyond the constitutional boundaries. And in any other country, as Christopher Arm says, such presidents should be impeached.
Correct. So, gentlemen, just before I allow the panels to interact more with Dr. Hinds, let us also welcome Brian Max from Max Media Productions. He is on telephone with us. Brian, welcome.
Hi, Yoga. Very good night to you and the panel.
Very good night to you. How is it out there? I know you have been traversing the length and breadth of the East Coast and West Coast all day, talking to various groups, having a feedback on where people are, what's their thoughts. What have you gathered so far? How are people reacting to the non-declaration by GECOM?
Well, I think a lot of voters were expecting to hear something positive out of GECOM. I think they got a 5% declaration, and a lot of people are saying that it's not enough. But you must understand how GECOM operates. Every presiding officer who's in charge of a polling booth is supposed to reach to Georgetown and literally hand over to Mr. Lowenfield that document, that sealed document, which would be the statement of poll for his area, for his polling station. And if you can try to understand how huge Guyana is, then maybe you'll get an understanding of how difficult it is to do this process. I guess in the future we need to simplify that a little bit more. Maybe once we can verify that this is indeed the statement of poll, maybe just get it flown out on an aircraft, or maybe in modern day and technology, we just simply send a photograph of it. And if everyone up there can verify, yes, this is it, the PNC, the APNU group, the PVP folks, maybe that'll be good enough. And then if you need further verification, then you go along. But as you asked about the mood around town, Georgetown, and around the place, I was doing some live streams, and as folks could have seen, The place is extremely quiet. A lot of the stores in Regent Street have been closed. Most of the Chinese stores, own stores, are closed. They got some kind of data from somebody and they closed their store for safety. The word on the street is, and talking to my political friends in both APNU AFC and the PPP, is that the PPP has some 15 to 20,000 votes ahead right now on the APNU AFC coalition. I know a lot of people don't want to come out and say it openly because of GECOM, the need for GECOM to do this declaration, but that is what I'm hearing on the ground, that the PPP is either 15 or 20,000 votes ahead of the APNU AFC coalition right now.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Brian. Of course, to viewers out there, be cautioned that none of the numbers here are official in terms of GECOM. Brian, what would have been the collective reaction? Look, as of last night, a lot of people listened to Low and Feed, the CEO, let's not call him, let's call position. A lot of person heard the CEO said that by midday today, we would be in probably a far advanced position. So a lot of people, there was a lot of expectations for that press conference today. What was the collective feeling from people when at midday today there was actually no declaration?
Well, I could have literally driven down the middle of Regent Street today without having to any vehicles. It was extremely quiet in town. Everyone was extremely tense. A lot of the business folks are definitely worried, and people are expecting to be very cautious as they go about their business. Right now, it's just on a need of must-have that people are being seen in Georgetown right now. Only the people who need to be in Georgetown are there.
What about public transport? Have you seen the usual flow of public transport, or it's been
no,
really,
not at all. I passed by one of the bus parks, and it was like all the buses were parked, and very few passengers, very few buses on the road running. It's just everybody is pretty much scared of something happening, and they're not taking any chances.
Dr. Hinds.
And I guess that's where we can vacillate, we can debate, because announcement or a declaration with some degree of alacrity would basically put things behind us and we have to move ahead. The longer it goes, the business sector is going to suffer. People are going to continue to have a little bit of queasiness about it and stuff like that.
You know, as you were saying earlier, the two main political parties, they had enough observers in the polling stations. I think there were 2,300 polling stations plus around Guyana. And I know for a fact that the PPP had at least 1,800 observers looking on and taking notes and snapping a photograph of the statement of polls. So I know the PPP is in possession of at least 1,800 statement of polls, and I know most likely if the APNU AFC apparatus, election apparatus, party apparatus was in good order, that they would have had an equal amount of statement of polls. Once you have the statements of polls that was signed by the presiding officers and the other observers, they all signed off on it. That is what you need to just simply tabulate, and you would know by 11 o'clock last night. Both of the political parties, APNU AFC and the PPP, they would have known who won.
Right.
I was trying to get in contact with my contact on the PPP. I have some friends on the PPP side, and they suddenly went very quiet. And after a while, I realized that they didn't want to implicate and they didn't want to maybe jump the gun on GECOM. But the PPP boys are definitely smiling tonight.
Brian,
so your feedback, Brian, is that the PPP is ahead. I mean, that's what you have said.
That's what I heard. At least 15,000, minimum 15,000 votes ahead.
But Brian, you would have heard the CEO said today also that some presiding officer mistakenly placed a statement of poll in the ballot box rather than give it to the deputy returning officer. And that kind of delayed the process at GECOM. How widespread you heard was that scenario where the presiding officers placed the statement of poll in the ballot box rather than give it to the deputy returning officer?
Well, I actually haven't heard much of that because I was on the road mostly interacting with people all day. And I didn't get a chance to really get much of that information. I did hear a bit about it, but The GECOM workers are very, very careful with what they do. They follow the instructions to a T, and they are extremely professional with how they work. When I went to vote, they were extremely professional. I got through in under 5 minutes. And as someone who worked in elections before, I was part of United Force for many years, and I was one of the observers for United Force. I know they go through the routine very tediously, and they make sure that everything is signed, and they really go through it. And sometimes people get confused. The training process must have been hard for GECOM because they're not working with GECOM 24/7. These are persons who volunteer and work for a stipend and stuff like that. A lot of teachers and a lot of professionals. And unless you have that ability to pay these people throughout the year, for every year, you will always have a newcomer who will probably make a mistake or two.
Brian, I want to say this, and I want to say this to Dr. Hinds too. The situation is very tense now. GECOM, by delaying the results and making it, stretching this tenseness throughout, it's about time GECOM declared election the same night. What's wrong with that? Get the results in, get the SOPs. You don't have to see them. Someone, your REOs, text it to you or fax it to you. Use that number. But you cannot let the country remain this tense going into weekend. Lowenfield said by Thursday, Friday, we will know the results. Now, people are tense right now, and this is what been plaguing Guyana over the years. And if people are tense, somewhere along the road, that will boil over. So I'm saying it's about time GECOM take corrective measures to give polls out like the rest of the Caribbean countries. I mentioned last that Canada is one of the largest countries in North Inland space. And within 4 hours of an election, the winner is declared. And they have remote areas in Canada. They don't wait until they see the statement of polls. So something got to be done to let GECOM advance the process. We cannot remain this backward for this long. It's too long now.
Correct.
The 5% that GECOM declared today is way too low. They should have at least given us at least about 70% of the results by now. Because the mass comes from Region 4, from Region 3. Region 9 is just, I think, about 20,000, 30,000 votes from Region 9. Region 10, I think, is another 30,000. Of course, Berbice, Region 5 and 6, they've got some numbers as well, but it's all road. You can drive up. I almost drove to Rosignol yesterday, so I don't see why it is that GECOM cannot get the readily available in the big areas, especially in Region 4, Sophia, all through Georgetown, going up to, because I think Region 4 ends somewhere by Mahaica, and it ends just outside of Linden. All easily available roads.
Mobilize up the highway.
Before you speak, Dr. Hinds, on the same matter, but Brian, here is the audition to all of you gentlemen. Look, the last 2 elections, we have had prolonged, agonizing delays. We should have learned. Today, the international observers have given GECOM a slap on the wrist because they did not implement any of the recommendations that were made the last election. But here is the other problem. GECOM released, as of yesterday, they released a website upon which they promised to release the results as they get it. If you go on that website now, it is down. So that is very, very strange. And also, the final thing I'll say in that regard, what I found strange is that last election, that was even more contentious in terms of worries of people, because last election there was all of this thing about change and so forth. GECOM was releasing statement of polls as it was being vetted. So you were getting continuous, although slow, but continuous results. Now we're getting nothing. It's like a blackout.
Yeah. Can I come in?
Sure.
I share the frustration of my co-panelists with slow release of information. And I completely agree with Dr. Rose that, we need to do this thing quicker. But let me just say this. Guyana is a real place. and it's a place with a long history of election rigging. And I can tell you, if you rush to announce results the same night, the problem will come after you announce the results. Look, Guyana is a unique place. Rigging takes place from the time you start registration up until a minute before you announce the results. Right? So therefore, we have to cut them some slack. Right? There is the argument of efficiency, like take that argument, but there is a political consideration that they're not talking about, and that is in a place like Guyana, you want to check every little area, every little T you need to cross, and every little I you need to dot, because we are experts at electoral mathematics. I say no more.
Well, Dr. Hinds, having said that, and I agree with you, but what Dr. Rose said, delaying the process longer and longer, it's like trying to light a fire and the wood is wet and you have to take your time, but then when it spark, it's gone. And that's the problem. Tensions are building up between communities who wants to hear what has been the result. So yes, declaring it last night might have been a bit early, but listen, we're tonight now. And we only have 1,300 or 300 statement of polls so far, I think, released. I mean, it's ridiculous. But Brian, what is the atmosphere in the street like? I know you said it's empty in terms of vehicles, but are people assembling on the streets and talking? Because once people start assembling on the street, that is cause for concern, because one miscommunication can trigger off a lot of problems. And we hope that don't happen. Are you seeing people, meeting at the corner of the streets as you drive around the city?
No. There was no such gathering of people. People are moving about doing their business. The braver ones who came into Georgetown, maybe some of them not as brave, but maybe had to come into Georgetown to do some stuff. I think Guyanese on the whole, I think we all want to have this violence that is associated with elections put behind us. I think Guyanese from all walks of life, we want to get on with voting like every other country, where there's a winner and the party that loses as such can literally call and say, hey, it was a good fight, you won, let's work together to make Guyana better. We are at the crossroads right now. We're at the verge where we are about to become a major oil producing nation. I mean, we're just at 100,000 barrels per day presently because there's just one ship pumping up the oil. They're about to put another boat out there soon, within another 3 months, and we can move up to 200,000 barrels per day. We right now, Guyana is probably getting about 900,000 US per day from the Exxon operation. In another maybe 6 months, we'll move that up to $2 million per day.
So
we want to have a country. We want to have a country that we can be proud of. For too long, we have been kept back as a people. For too long, we have been stifled as a people. We want to move this country forward. The young people of Guyana, we want to move this country forward so we can be proud that when people visit Guyana, they can see a nation that is progressive.
Well, Brian,
we have had this situation for too long.
Yeah, Brian, to that point, I must tell you too that, and to viewers out there to remind you, we did say on this show a little earlier that look, the truth is that the political parties, they know who is the winner.
They know who
both
parties know.
Both parties know.
Both parties know tonight who the winner is.
But as Dr. Hinds has rightly said, both parties also want to allow all the I's to be dotted and the T's to be crossed, so that at the end of the day, I think it's also another. I don't want to call it a game, but it's also another way of not letting people be rudely, abruptly told you lose or you win, because it might create exuberance on one hand and create anxiety on the other, which is not healthy for a nation. I would like to call on viewers, as you are, wherever you're coming in from Guyana, please text and let us know how it is in your community and what's the mood of people as we continue our conversation. Brian, you were saying?
You can either take the punch now, or you can take the punch tomorrow, or you can take it the next day. But you know what? You're going to get a punch. Your party is going to lose. The party that you've been supporting is going to lose. You have to take that punch as a sportsman. You entered into a fight. You entered into a political battle.
Correct.
You lost the battle. You have to step aside and allow the other person to go forward. Just like how you wanted your party to win, the other people want their party to win.
Gentlemen,
And
your questions.
we as a people, we have to call on the politicians. We have to call on the winner to include everyone in this new government.
Absolutely.
We have to have inclusive governance so that we, the people, can benefit from the money that will be coming in from this oil. And not just a small portion of persons, as we've known in the previous government and in this government that is about to be placed into the political pasture. They've had their share of corruption as well. And we the young people want to share this pie. And in a way, when we vote, I almost don't ever vote for the president. I vote for the guy who's going to be the finance minister of this country, because he's the guy who's going to be cutting up that pie. He's the guy who's going to decide how much duty we're going to pay on cars, how much taxes we're going to pay, how much VAT we're going to pay. That's the guy, important guy. And I want to know when the PPP choose their finance minister, I want to know who he's going to be, because that's the guy who's going to really make this country into a progressive country or a backward country. We can get oil, and we can still be backward, because a lot of countries in Africa, they have Nigerian countries that they have massive amounts of oil, and they're still backward.
Let's go back to the results and what people are feeling, because indeed I've spoken to some more international observers today, and yes, everybody's telling us, allow the process to take its place and stuff like that, but everybody's still anxious because you need to put this behind us and move on. Gentlemen, any other thoughts for Brian and
yes,
any other questions?
Yes, I do have a question, Doctors Mohammed, Hinds, and Brian. My name is Cleveland.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot about, concerns. I share some of those concerns regarding distribution of finance in the future in terms of planning what you're going to do with oil money and all of that. But my concern right now is, what is the feedback are you guys on the ground over there getting from the international observers and those who are more neutral in regard what is happening with the elections? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, the international observers are keeping their cards closer to their chest, but I have a couple of friends within the organizations. I have a couple of friends in the AOC countries, AOS countries, and I have a friend in the Guyana brew, and they're both saying that they are also getting the feedback that the PPP is ahead.
Okay. Yeah, indeed. I mean, to supplement what Brian has said, I spoke to two gentlemen today, and both have said that in their view, and I must say that all the observers that I would have interacted with, and gentlemen, you feel free to correct me if you disagree, they have all said that the process of yesterday was free and fair. The elections, there was no hiccup, there was no problems, there were no disenfranchised voters, and so where the conduct of the election is concerned, kudos to GECOM, well done. But of course, we now have the problem with the results as we did the last time, right?
Dr. Mahathir, can I come in for a quick second? I don't know much about the international observers because I don't interact with them. But I'm here in Guyana, and I've been here, and I went around Guyana today, and it's quite normal. I think sometimes we overplay this expectation of violence, and there's a subtext which we don't pay attention to. You think that Georgetown is going to blow up. Georgetown didn't blow up on election day. Where we had the problems on election day was on the East Coast, on the West Coast. Sometimes we have to be very careful how we frame these expectations. That, Georgetown is a place that's peopled by a majority ethnic group. And we're saying in our subtext that those people have some kind of affinity for violence. So we expected them to behave uncouth. And here is where sometimes I get into trouble because I have to defend the dignity of those people. You know, look, Guyana is awaiting the election results. People are going about their business, all right? And we should not make assumptions about communities and how they would behave, because that in itself is going to raise tensions even more. So I'm asking people, please cool it, right? That community that we expect silence to come from, some of us are working in that community, and I think others should work in other communities so that Guyana can go through whatever. If there is a change in government and we have a transition, we can do that peacefully. The threat of violence is always there, and it comes from all communities, not one community.
Dr. Hinds,
Right.
I just received a text. I just received a text here. The private sector fears delayed results will trigger violence, and the OAS has called on GECOM to release the results at least by tomorrow noon in order to avoid any type of trouble in Guyana.
Correct.
All right.
So gentlemen, Brian, I'm gonna let you go. Please feel free to join, and to viewers out there, this has been Brian Max from Max Media Production. Brian, thank you so much as we welcome Senior Counsel, Mr. Ralph Ramkarran, to our platform. Senior, how are you tonight?
Good, fine, thank you. Gentlemen?
Good night, Ralph.
Hi.
If I may call you that.
Yes, sir.
So, Senior, welcome again once more. Brian Max was just with us, and Brian said that based on all kind of numbers are going around. Of course, GECOM has not been. We're going to ask you for your thoughts on GECOM's readiness to disclose the results of the elections. Brian has said that based on his work with both of the political parties, as you know, having been in the system for a very, very, very long time, the parties know where they stand. The parties know the amount of votes they have and the seats that they likely will have. It's a matter of official declaration. Brian has opined on this show that the PPP is by about 15 to 20,000 votes. What are your comments, Senior, and how has the election day gone for you?
Well, I've heard those figures, but as of now, they're unofficial. They're not confirmed by anybody. I did hear Mr. Jagdeo on the news at 7 o'clock. And he said that the PPP has an unassailable lead, and that he's calling on GECOM to issue the results of those returning officers, or to allow the returning officers who have finished their count to declare the results. Apparently, the allegation is that some returning officers have finished the count, but they are not being allowed by GECOM to issue the results. So he's calling for that. Well, we don't know that's what he said. We don't know what the true situation is. But the update the results are given out, the better for everybody.
Question.
Indeed.
Can you say what percentage of the national poll is in? That result. What is he referring to? What percentage of the votes are in the results?
Well, he didn't say, and I don't know, but it seemed to. He said that they have calculated the results based on statements of poll and not on telephone calls or messages from their agents or anything like that. So he said that these are confirmed statements of poll that they have received, and that is the basis on which they have made their calculation. It appears that they have received all the statements of poll, and that is the basis on which he has called the results for PPP. But we haven't heard from the PNC as yet, from APNU agency.
Well, the other thing, the PNC just issued a statement that they will win 39 seats, a release from APNU.
Now, I would just like to say something. Given the slowness of the reporting and everything, I think maybe the media houses should actually run a parallel process, to GECOM, just so that there is some amount of transparency among a more independent,
well, everybody.
Among the independent, so at least it's transparent. And so, in addition to GECOM, we have media houses with publishing some of those numbers. So, Even though they're slow, at least we would have an idea of what's really going on.
And that's why I asked
But
the question
Brian,
of the independent
senior,
observers,
before
because I mean,
senior,
transparency.
before you comment, Brian, here what is the problem? So today at the GECOM presser, Stabrook News highlighted a problem. You see, the way that the media can access the statement of polls is by seeing that statement of poll that is pasted up outside of the polling center. Stabrook News highlighted today that they couldn't get access because after the polls were closed, the place was locked up, so they couldn't go in to have a read of what is statement of polls. So, so the media would not, you know, invariably be denied access to those statement of polls there, not by anyone's direct fault. Senior, you were saying?
Well, I was going to say that at every elections over the past, the media has been called upon to perform this service. But I don't think the media has the resources. I mean, which media, except the very large newspapers, can find people all over the country to have the resources to send people. It's dangerous. They have all kinds of difficulties. I mean, I live opposite a school where we vote. We voted every time. And the gates are locked and they're right. They can't get in the school compound. The gate is locked. Nobody can get in. So it's a very difficult problem for the results. The thing is, you know, in 1992, I'm sorry to go so far back, there was a system which allowed preliminary results to be given. And in 1992, results were given in 24 hours or so. But these are preliminary results, and after those elections, no preliminary results were ever given. And there was an insistence on giving only official results, that is declared results. And that is why it's taking so long. And Guyana is probably the only place that you don't give preliminary results. Mind you, when you have things like people taking in fake statements of poll into the GECOM and all of that, you have all kinds of problems and suspicions and all of that.
But Mr. Ramkarran, Dr. Mohammed said it before, and we all know it. Each political party knows how many votes they've received. The PP knows it, the AFC, AP and UAFC knows it. Why can't they just call each other and say, congratulations, you have won the election? They know the results, they have it in their hands.
Well, things don't work like that. I mean, if Jagdeo is right when he said they have an unassailable lead, and he said so with great confidence, I don't know whether he's right or not, but assuming that he's right, then APNO AFC does not have a majority, but they're telling people that they have this majority, and it's going to create problems later, you know.
That is so true. That is so true.
Mr. Ramkarran, you just blank out here.
I'm here, but
okay.
I've gone on to a little icon, and I don't know.
No, that was we're not gonna take that literally.
Reflection.
Mr. Ramkarran, can you just click the video icon on the bottom of the screen?
Video icon at the bottom. There's no video icon.
It should look like a camera.
We can hear you, but we don't see
You're
you.
right.
In the meantime, as you're doing that, Mr. Ramkarran, you made a statement. You made a statement saying that there are reports that the returning officers have already signed off in many areas, but GECOM is not allowing them to declare the result. Is that factual, or that is what you heard on the grapevine?
That's what Mr. Jagdeo said. I can't say whether it's factual or not. That's what Mr. Jagdeo said on the news.
Is that a reliable source?
You believe Mr. Jagdeo? I don't believe Mr. Jagdeo.
Would you believe him
I don't
that the
believe
source
Mr.
is
Jagdeo.
reliable?
I don't know if I can take Mr. Jagdeo's word
or
for
not.
it.
I'm saying that is what he said.
I can take that from you, yeah. But I'm just questioning whether he's a reliable source based on his history.
Well, sorry. I mean, look, I would hear you. I would hear you there. My colleague. But here is what the truth is.
No politician
Both parties know exactly what's their position.
That's the result.
But GECOM is the referee.
GECOM.
GECOM is the referee. We can't listen to
Correct.
the parties.
No, GECOM
I'm
will
kind
only
of
take it
suspicious that
official
you come
and
out in
doesn't
front and
stop
say
them from
something like that.
No. As Douglas, GECOM can only make it official,
I
but the
agree.
parties got the numbers.
I agree. But why would
Correct.
one come out and make a statement like that? I mean, you're not sure
Dr.
what the
Hinds-
result
No,
is.
because you do have the numbers.
He
The
has the
thing
numbers.
is, both
No,
the
in
PPP
fact,
and the APNU, they have their numbers, and we all
but
agree.
Let me make a point. In
So-
fact, on the front page of the Chronicle today, the prime ministerial candidate is saying that APNU has 4 or 5 extra seats in the parliament. So, should we take his word for it too?
Yeah, exactly.
Should we take Jackdo's word for it? Whose word should we take? Mr. Hinds, whose word, as part
Dr.
of
Hinds,
it?
what's
Well,
your...
no, I don't think we should listen to the parties if we are
Okay.
trying
All right.
to determine
Okay.
what
That's
the
what-
seat is.
that's what I was
But
asking for the
City, as
international
you know,
observers, more
have
neutral.
some proximity.
Yeah.
Have some
That's
proximity
what
to the
I was
leadership of the
Yeah.
coalition. And I have information from that source, but I am not going to repeat that information in public.
I agree
I
with
will
you.
not.
And I agree with
Right?
you.
Because there are consequences to that, you know?
Yes, okay.
I think once you say you have an unassailable lead,
Yeah.
and then tomorrow they say the other side win,
Yeah.
then you cycle and say the rig, the cheat.
Yeah.
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 So
And
you're
that
setting
is
a
the
scene for
danger
problems.
of what these guys are doing.
Yes.
Right?
No, but
So
Dr.
I
Hinds,
think
Dr.
the
Hinds.
political parties should remain quiet
That's what I'm
and
saying.
let
You should not be
GECOM
making
announce the
GECOM.
result.
But
GECOM
Dr.
wait for
Dr. Hinds,
GECOM.
Dr. Hinds,
Wait for
You're setting
GECOM.
the scene
he
for
said he got
problems.
an unassailable lead because he got all the SOPs in his hands.
He's not
And if you're going to doubt the SOPs, he will have to produce them to show his lead. And if you're going to, and if he produces them, how can you doubt that?
But you should not be doing that. That's
Dr.
setting a
Rose,
scene for
Dr. Rose,
problems.
I'm talking about the politics of this
Politics.
thing.
Politics,
I
yeah,
am
and statistics.
maybe,
Politics,
maybe.
yeah.
Listen. Maybe Mr. Jackdo is correct. As one or it's winning. What I'm saying, once you put that out in the public domain,
That's my concern.
all right,
Yes.
and let's say GECOM announces a contrary result, that's trouble. That's trouble.
That's
I
trouble.
think we are insisting on efficiency. We are insisting on efficiency, and I am all for that. I'm saying, remember, Guyana is a real
Right.
place.
Goes right back to
With
the
a
point you
real-
made earlier, Dr. Hines. Guyana is a different kind of beast. It's a political
Yes.
and racial and ideological issue. So when you come out and make a statement like that upfront, you're setting a scene. When that is retracted or debunked, then we got a problem.
I mean,
But guys, let's stop one.
no, wait, I can give some examples. I can give some examples. The
Okay,
scale-
let's move on from that.
No.
Let me give an example. The Sheldon Sugar State, Sheldon factory should have produced so many hundred millions of megawatts of power and so many hundred millions of dollars
Let's
of
stop
revenue
right
for
there.
guys.
Another brother.
It did not happen. We couldn't take the word for it. So I mean, let's wait for GECOM. That's my
I
point.
agree. Let's wait with you.
No, so hold on. So we're arguing a couple points here, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Look, Guyana has spent millions of dollars
Billions.
billions to empower GECOM
Yeah.
to be efficient.
Exactly.
GECOM cannot complain of lack of resources, lack of manpower, or lack of anything, including whether it's air freight or not to bring the polling officers here. They cannot complain because
Right.
in no way were their funds linked or curtailed. All right? The issue here, and Dr. Hinds, you have a point, I would want to gently disagree with you. I feel both parties must become mature. Jagdeo as a leader of his party and Granger as the leader of his coalition need to come out and say, ladies and gentlemen, these are the realistic results we have. You can cross-check against each other. Congratulations to the winner. And let GECOM do their thing and take a whole year if they want. We got a country to run.
Exactly. I agree with that.
Well, having said that,
I agree
I mean,
with
that's
that.
that's a good point. But listen to this. I think we need to put things in perspective. As we all agree, PPP and APNU have all the statements of polls. We just heard that the Chronicle published yesterday, because they were published last night for today, that APNU has 4 or 5 seats more in Parliament. they would not have had the statement of poll
Last night.
last night
That's
and
right.
have this morning.
Right.
So APNU went and made that declaration. Now PPP has made their declaration, and both of them are claiming victory. That is not possible. The thing is, as you rightly said, and all of us need to agree here, politicians need to be more responsible, especially in the kind of environment that we are dealing with in a country like Guyana, where suspicion and everybody's looking at each other with a magnifying glass to ensure that you are not cheating on me or I'm not cheating on you. And when the two big political parties are both declaring victory, that is the recipe for disaster. And we would have hoped that both parties would have stepped aside and said, based on the statement of poll, we know the results, but we are waiting on GECOM to make the final declaration without giving numbers, and I think that would have been a better stand for the country.
Only one party only one party came up.
No, both parties
That's the
claim
media.
victory.
That's the media, no?
No, both parties claim victory.
I don't think the PNC did.
Come on, man. Come on.
You just said it.
That's what you just said. No, I didn't get that.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, you just said Chronicle published
the
it.
Chronicle,
Hold on.
okay, that's government. Yeah.
No, but up to just
Gentlemen.
come to the statement I said.
Gentlemen,
Yes.
I didn't hear you on that.
Just a
I didn't know.
statement.
I know you got a statement. I didn't hear you.
I want to re-engage Senior for a moment. So at stake here is not just the fate of either of the large parties. At stake here is the efforts, the sweat, the blood and tears that would have been expended in the process by the newer parties. Senior, what is your gut feel as to how the smaller parties and especially your party would have performed? Because from the perspective of listening to Brian and other people earlier in the show and outside of the show, it seemed like beyond expectations, the smaller parties a lot of them might have been wiped off the map.
I don't think we've done very well. I don't think, I'm not sure if we'll get a seat. Looking at the very early results and the number of votes that we are getting, some of the small parties will be wiped off the map. I don't think we will be wiped off the map, but we will be wiped somewhere along the way. I don't think we'll get enough seats. I don't think we'll get enough votes. Based on what I've seen so far, I don't think we'll get enough votes to get a seat. And I don't think the parties that have joined together, the three parties, I don't think we will get enough votes to get a seat either. We will be the largest of the three, but still. We haven't had the interior results yet, so we don't know what the Liberty and Justice, Mr. Schumann's party, would do. We don't know how well he would do in the interior region, because that is where his strength is. All I've seen is the coastal results. So we still have a way to go to get some results. But I agree with the sentiments which have been expressed by the gentleman. But you know, the reality, Jagdev didn't go to announce and to broadcast and to boast. He said to give him some credit.
Right.
He said he only came to speak to some other thing. He said, look, we have won the election, we have a sailing lead. But he went on the program to call on the chief election officer to allow the returning officers to declare the results. And he was appealing for an early declaration of results to avoid the raising of tension. On the same program, the reporter announced, let me repeat, the reporter announced that APNU AFC has said that they got some number of seats more than 30, 32 or 33. So that is what the state of play is. I do agree that the parties should come together and declare, but that has never happened. It's not going to happen in Guyana's chart.
True.
You know.
True.
Mr. Ramkarran, can I ask you a question? Being a third party, you're giving the people a choice between to at least move away from the two major parties with their stereotype racial voting. Why do you think your party didn't do that well?
Because the ethnic poll is very strong. It is very embedded in the people's culture. You know, they vote ethnicity. That's it. That hasn't changed. They have not seen. We can only seek to influence the political elites. You know, we can't change the nature of our society in a year or in a few years. We got to get the political elites to come together and to see the reality on the ground has to hit people. Like, for example, when they realize that they cannot manipulate the current system to suit themselves, you will see a change in heart. If APNU AFC loses these elections, I am sure that down the line, before the next elections, you will begin to hear calls for shared governance. It will emerge once again. When you lose, that is what you do. But so it's only the political parties which can change the system. And you have to change the political parties. You know, sometimes David knows this more than anyone else. You know, sometimes the leaders have to take a lead. The leaders have to lead the struggle and lead the people, and you know, rather than follow the
One final question, Mr. Ramkarran, and I'm going to put you on the spot on this one. Third parties in Guyana do not last more than 2 election cycles. United Force, 64, 68, wiped out after. AFC, 2006, 2011, now it's amalgamated into APNU. Brother Hinds, I will not talk about the WP, I don't know where it stands. Your good friend Freddie Kusin said it's a party on paper only, so I will not go there. So tell me why you think your party will survive more than 2 election cycles.
Well, I don't know if we will. We had an idea, and we established ourselves to fight for that idea. I don't know where we will go from here. I can't predict. If the idea doesn't take hold among the leadership of the political parties, we wouldn't survive. That's the reality.
I want to make a comment.
And, you know, but gentlemen, that's one of the things I must say, that look, I mean, I've spoken here on this platform. We have had almost all of the newer parties. Charles, you would agree with me here, I'm sure. We have had almost all of the political parties on this show. The most pragmatic has actually been Senior Counsel Ralph Ramkarran and Timothy Jonas. They have been most pragmatic in declaring what they want in joining this process and what they expect and how you go thereafter. So that's been a very revealing but pragmatic response from you, Senior. Thank you so much for that. Gentlemen, any other questions for Senior?
Yes, I have a comment that maybe Dr. Hinds would respond to this. I remember in '92, the WPA was a part of the process. They were involved in, I think they had a couple of seats. I remember speaking to what's his name? Dr. Thomas and Rupert Ryan. I was at the office president at the time when they were going in, and I said to them, careful with your, you know, slight conversation, be careful with your alignment, because you may very well be wiped out after. Anyway, whatever the result of that, they were there, and the WPA is still around, maybe to a lesser extent, but as a third force, the WPA has been a part of both governments, current and past. And I don't know what your comments are in terms of what the outlook as a third force in this current administration going forward. Dr. Hinds, if you have a comment.
Well, we weren't part of the PPP government, and that was a disappointment because, you know, you can 30 years later look back. I think the history of Guyana would have been different if we had formed a coalition with the PPP in 1992. I know Ralph and I have had some disagreements on that process, but that's history now. But we were never part of the PPP government. We are part of this government, and it has been debated the nature of our participation in the government. But I think we have to make a distinction between electoral wiping out and the other form of wiping out. I think in ethnic societies like ours, you know, parties just don't have an electoral role. The big parties will always dominate. But I think there is a space for the other parties to play the role of advocacy. And I think, you know, Dr. Rose talked about the UF and the AFC and well, he didn't say much about the WPA. What he's talking about there is electorally. If you examine the history of Guyana, third parties have played a tremendous role. I'm surprised the brother even said that, you know, the name one policy. Well, you know, we got both parties to agree to cash transfer, some part of it. In the previous government, in this government, in the term that just finished, we got them to agree to state that as recovery. I think we have to, as analysts, become more analytical and make a distinction between electoral politics and the politics of advocacy. And it's often the politics of advocacy that changes a country. At some point, we will have to deal with the question of constitutional reform, and we will have to thank Anog for putting that on the platform at elections. I think, guys, you all have to be a little bit more nimble when you talk about wiping out and wiping in.
Dr. Hinds.
I like
Dr. Hinds. Dr.
Excellently put. I like that.
Dr. Hinds, I was talking about
Yes.
electoral. And if you talk about party advocacy, if you're not elected, I think you have your chances of changing the country or changing people's mind are limited. That's the reality. I'm a political realist in this one. So if you talk about wipe out electorally, that's what I was talking about. But if you talk about advocacy, I agree with you on that. But I'll tell you what, they get a ton of groups in society do that, and they don't get anywhere. And if you're not elected to make changes in the state or the parliament, you're not going to be making changes in no country. That's the reality.
Some organizations function as pressure groups. They don't necessarily have to be in parliament
Okay, fine.
as a party.
But still,
They function to put pressure or stress on the government, keep them in check.
but I'm saying they're limited.
The WP has done that when they were not in government.
You have to have a vote in the parliament to make changes, and your vote must carry weight. So if you talk about advocacy and you don't have electoral voice, then I don't know how that will work. Maybe you can educate me on that.
That's why WPA is in the coalition, and we also rejoined the PNC. It's exactly what you were talking about there. That we feel that smaller parties have to find a way to coalesce. Ideally, we should have both big parties in a government of national unity. That has been our historic position, and others now taking that lead in advocating. That's where we have to go. We have made the determination that we have to start somewhere, and we see the coalition as the stepping stone to that. There are difficulties, and I said, you're never going to get 1,000 things done. In the last government, we got them to agree to state asset recovery. In this new government, whichever side comes in, they're committed to some form of cash transfer, which we have advanced as a poverty alleviation a policy. So we have to pay attention when there are small things being done.
And I just
I'm not on this program to say what happens behind the scenes, but I can tell you a lot happens behind the scenes.
But I want to say this to you. Indeed, Dr. Clive Thomas came out with $5,000 for each person from the oil income, revenue, and so forth. But you said they make that a policy. But the president says we'll have to have a feasibility study to get that done.
President, listen to me. The WPA inserted that in the policy.
Yes, but the president said he will have to have a feasibility study to get it done.
The WPA suggested that.
Fine.
No, it's not the president. The president is just saying.
But it has not been accepted. It has not been accepted by the president.
All right.
But I'm debating this with you.
I cannot disagree with you there, Dr. Hinds, because
that's another forum.
Yeah, that's another forum. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can take that up in another discussion. But the truth is that on this platform here, we have given a lot of kudos. I've said so over and over to the newer parties that have come on.
Right.
Look, there is a niche. There is a place for everybody in a political scene in Guyana. And the fact that the current political scene locks them out means we got much more work to do, but we cannot give up. And the truth is that we have to keep on agitating. And this is why I said, I will continue to support being pragmatic about where we stand, but at the same time, we have to stand. We just can't, because the two big guys say we are the big ones, we just can't give up, or nobody should give up. Let's also welcome on the forum Ruel Johnson, who has tried to I think excite some of his persons to come out and vote for his party too. I don't know what's his position presently, but as he's coming on, senior, you would have had a lot of younger persons agitating with you in the ANOG's race towards the ballot, towards the day of polls. What are their feeling, and how would Ralph Ramkarran now be talking to those youngsters, especially, to not give up hope and to still see a bright future?
Young people are not going to give up hope. You know that young people is a great resource.
Absolutely.
Our objective, because the young city folk in particular are not as wedded to the old politics as we, the older generation, have been. So they are more receptive to the ideas that we are proposing. And we have had great support from young people, and the new parties also have had support from the young people, particularly in the city of Georgetown and wherever in the towns and so on. And that is because that they want to move away from the old politics that we've been engaging in. They're tired of it, and they don't see any future in it for them. So we have been getting some very positive vibes. And you know, some of the other parties, TNM and so on, they have been saying the same thing about young people.
Right.
But, you know, our experience has been positive.
So I have a question, Senior and Dr. Hinds, I have a question for you both. While Dr. Hinds, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, you will still be politically relevant because you are part of the coalition. Your party is part of the coalition. But in terms of going to the future, whatever way the declarations happen tomorrow, do you see that the real politic of PPPC and APNO AFC changing anytime soon?
No. I mean that's why you're in the trenches trying to talk to people. You know, the politicians. Ralph made a very important point earlier. You know, politicians have to lead from the front, and they're very stubborn there in that. They don't lead from the front. And so these smaller parties have to find ways to speak to their own people, you see? And I think that's our job, that's our work. You know, those parties do not politically educate the masses in terms of progressive politics. It's not in their interest, all right?
Hello?
And it may not be in their DNA, right?
No, it's not. And that's the role. That's the role for the other parties. Because if Guyana is going to survive as a living civilization, moving into the 24th century, it is not going to be because of the big parties. It is going to be because of smaller political parties and the civil society organizations.
Dr. Hinds, I must say this to you though. I commend the WPA for bringing out that $5,000 to the people, because it should be something the people should get back. And I hope you'll continue to advocate on that, even after the election, win or lose. Mr. Ramkarran, I compliment you for putting the Constitution on your platform, and I hope you'll continue to fight for that even after the election. Because constitutional reform is needed badly in Guyana, and it has to be done pronto. Not next year, not 5 years from now. Today, it's needed. So I must congratulate both of you for that.
Gentlemen, we are joined also by Ruel Johnson, who is on the phone. So viewers, Ruel Johnson is on phone. You would only hear audio, no video at this time. Ruel, welcome to the show. We have had some fantastic discussion so far. How are you, and what's your party's prospect so far?
We have not seen, GECOM has officially released only a fraction. Our last count about 6% of the polling, so of the statement of polls. So we can't make an accurate prediction of what the final outcome is going to be. However, I think I can see with a fair amount of accuracy that all the emerging parties underperformed. From what we expected. That's a reality we have to face.
Okay. And what's what's your opinion of? I mean, I've asked every panelist here as they come on GECOM's performance. Do you, Roel Johnson, you and or your party have a position? Do you think you know who is a clear winner at this stage, even though GECOM hasn't declared?
Well, let me speak for me. What I would say is this: both parties, both major parties, at the current time would have had a clear indication of who's the winner. We've seen on social media various declarations, etc. Somebody has to be engaged in what is clearly duplicitous theater on the results. Now we've had indications, intelligence, that there seems to be a winner. I won't pronounce on who it is, but what I would advise, in the interest of managing expectations, that both sides, before they make any declarations or have their support base riled up, at least be responsible and urge GECOM to release the official statements as early as possible. At current, what you have is hyping up of expectations of what will very likely be a parliamentary majority. This is not what we'd hoped for, but that is what's going to be expected.
Correct. And I think to our panel, to our other panelists, we have Dr. Hinds and the other members from the US and so forth. Roel would have been backing us, one of these newer parties that emerged, and his analysis, his assessment is that the newer parties have underperformed. What's your questions for Roel?
I would want to go at a different angle, if you don't mind. I'm glad Dr. Hinds and Mr. Ramkarran and Mr. Johnson is here as part of smaller parties per se. I know the WPA is a part of the coalition. In our history, we have seen some prominent persons who have very charismatic. We can talk of Mr. Peter Degar when he started United Force. We can talk about Dr. Walter Rodney when he started the WPA. And to an extent, I think with the formation of the AFC, with the three candidates, the three persons, that also brought some fire into the equation. My question to you three gentlemen in particular, we have been advised, and I've been pushing this all the time, that I don't want to put the word ego into this assessment. But what I'm saying is that all these parties that rose up, they were not able to work together as one unit. And because you couldn't work as one unit, people were fragmented. Even they might like your idea. They might say it's a waste time looking at you because you're not a credible third force as the WPA was in Dr. Walter Rodney, as the AFC was in the formation, and as Mr. Peter Degar was in those days. My question to you guys is that why is it possible now that the election is now gone? Prepare ourselves for the next election. How can we, among yourselves, come up with one credible third force that will be, as Mr. Jonas was saying all the time in our discussion, that we don't want the two parties alone to be in the picture. You want this third force to be there. How can we get all of these small new parties to work together as one credible third force to contest the next election 5 years from now?
Yeah, well, if I may, and to refer to the one word that you used there, credible, right? Our major thing with regard to our stance has been, in order for a third force to emerge that is credible, it has to do things that are radically different from what currently obtains with the current parties. Now, what you have with both major forces, and they're essentially two main forces, whatever the facade of coalition is. You have ethnic division that fuels a corrupt hegemony, which in turn fuels the reinforcement of the ethnic divisions. One of the key things that we want to look at is public accountability and what we call radical transparency. And a fundamental aspect of that had to do with how we treated campaign financing. Up to now, Jagbir was promised that in 2019, late 2019, said that he would look at campaign finance reform. The coalition, after we released our campaign finance information, said that before the polling yesterday that they would release theirs. That was not done. So far, TCI has been the only party.
Okay. Dr. Hinds, your response to the question.
Yeah, oh my. It's a difficult time for new parties to come on the scene. If you look at the UF, you look at the WPA, you look at the AFC, they came at particular moments, and they were able to take advantage of the space that was allowed for small parties, and they took it as far as they could take it, and that's what happened, especially electorally. Electorally, you may be able to do well one term, second term. It's difficult the third time around, as we've seen with the AFC. And this election really was perhaps one of the most polarizing elections, difficult time for newer parties to come in. You know, as a new party, you have to introduce something, as Royal said, radically different from the other two, that can capture the imagination of enough people to give you some votes. And I think that this was really the wrong time. You know, paradoxically, it was the moment that threw up all of these newer parties. But it was the very moment that makes it difficult for the newer parties to gain any traction, electoral traction among the population. The whole question about working together, that it would have made a difference, I don't know. I don't know that if the newer parties had come together as one force, it would have made a difference. I'm telling you, what I'm hearing on the ground from ordinary people, they've made up their minds on the ethnic identification of their vote. So I have tremendous sympathy for the courage of these new people to come on the scene.
Dr. Hinds, I just want to ask you this question, but this question for all three of you. Given the population of Guyana, 65% are youths. Don't you think what Professor Sugrim has just said, bring all the third parties in as one united force with some radical ideas, as what Royal Johnson said, you don't think that will capture some of the young people votes in Guyana? Dr. Ramkarran, I'll start with you with your experience.
In the future, but
you see, Dr. Rose, I mean, let's senior comment on that question that was posed. But here's what I'll say to you. You know, everybody wants to be the bride. Nobody wants to be bridesmaid, right? Senior, your comment on the questions asked.
I think I agree broadly. But we also it's quite right that the successful parties have been the United Force, the WPA, and the AFC. The WPA was not electorally successful, but in terms of its impact on the society, it came at a particular time in our history. It attracted a particular type of people, that is multi-ethnic youth in particular, who were looking for a way out of the dictatorship, and adults as well. So all of these, I mean, when the AFC came on stream in the first election in 2006, it got 5 seats, and the PNC lost 5 seats. So right. When Corbyn was the leader, and Corbyn was not a popular figure, I'm sorry to say this because I think we still have very friendly relations, but he was not a popular leader. And the middle class African supporters of the PNC rebelled against it. After the 2011 elections, the PNC got back those seats because Brazier became the leader. So all these parties come along at a particular time that resonate with a section. The WPA got hit with the ethnic voting after the voting elections returned in 1992. And the parties now in existence, we don't have we don't have an issue. We don't have an issue to trigger the people. Youth, a lot of people make mistakes about it. The youth is not the youth vote like their parents. The vast majority of youth in Guyana vote just like how their parents vote. I mean, one guy was talking about, oh, the youth and so on are different from all. They're not different. The youth in the city perhaps is different. But the youth in Cane Grove, they don't want an African-led government. They want an Indian-led government. The youth in Ants Grove, they don't want an Indian government. They want an African-led government. So it's the same. They're caught up in the same issue. So while youth has some different concerns than the other, we have to understand that they're not a group that mind.
Dr. Mohammed, I'd like to jump in right there. That brings up my question to both all the guys on the Guyanese side. It raises the question of what is your strategy or platform for inclusion in that multi-ethnic society that is so polarized? How do you go forward, whether you're government or not in government, deal with this question of inclusion and change?
Well, the burden of inclusion is really not on the smaller parties or the newer parties. The burden of inclusion is on the large parties.
But it's not happening.
The inclusion that we're talking about is whether one side wants to include the other side. The coalition was allowed to get away with not implementing its campaign promise of constitutional reform and shared governance. It was allowed to get away because the PPP did not pursue it. The PPP took the position that they will wait for another election cycle and see if they get back in. And so the coalition was able to get away with not going seriously after shared governance. So the question of inclusion has to really, the burden of it is on those two larger parties. I can think of none of the smaller parties, as we like to call them. That is not for inclusion as a matter of policy.
Right. So, gentlemen, let me ask Ruel. So, Ruel, here on what for you and your team members?
Oh, our plan has always been twofold. One, we look at civic empowerment. So, after these elections, whatever the outcomes are, we will be looking at issues like how it is that we educate people about how the political system works. With regard to the issue of inclusion, one of our plans, and we will still be pushing it, has to do with having what the major parties have pushed off, which is an open and honest conversation on race and citizenship in Guyana. We will be pushing, as we have outlined, the meaningful pathway for constitutional reform. As we said before, since 2017, there's been a consultative commission bill that's been in Parliament. We'll be pushing that it has to be tabled, deliberated and passed, and the consultative commission established.
Okay.
Now, whoever's in Parliament, whoever's in power can resist it, as I pointed out in the letter. You had a standing committee on constitutional reform in which there has been effectively collusion in ensuring that constitutional reform, and this is the past 20 years, not just the past 5, never gets discussed. There's been agreement on that, essentially agreement on that.
Okay.
We intend to keep this issue in the forefront and keep it burning.
Right.
They will have to tell the people why they're resisting that. And both sides, because
we have a guest here, Mr. Leland Rupner. He wants to ask a couple of questions.
Please, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say that I served on the GECOM board in 1992 elections, right? I was one of the PCD representatives on the board. Anyway, so I'm very well versed with elections and electioneering in Guyana. So the question is for everyone there, especially Mr. Ramkarran, who was head of the PPP Parliamentary Reform Committee, yet nothing was done to amend any aspects of the Constitution. And the next point I want to make is there's nothing wrong with people voting along ethnic lines. That's, if they use ethnicity as a criteria to vote, that's their constitutional right. You can't change what people think. What should happen now is what the Dutch scientist Aaron Lechpart put forward. Let's have consociational politics. Let us have representation on all levels of management and the state boards based on ethnicity. Malaysia and Singapore have done that very well, and they've been very successful. One of the issues Guyana has is that this present government, this illegal government for the past year, won by 0.3%, yet they have governed Guyana like Adolf Hitler, like a Stalin. Those concepts need to change, because winner takes all policy destroys the country. It goes the same with Mr. Jagdev as well. Guyana is a very rare comical country where you vote for a dictatorship. That's what it is. It's a democratic dictatorship. And it befalls me that the present president has violated the Constitution on many occasions, especially when you say, I have to remove Mr. Prem Prasad from the Judicial Service Commission and Mr. Kennard from the Appellate Court because of their age, yet in the same vein appoint Mr. Patterson as head of GECOM. So these are all issues that people need to address. And Mr. Hinds, if you're thinking that you're voting for the lesser of two evils, well, if that's not evil, what you think the PPP will be? Because I assume the PPP and I calculate people win this election by about 3 seats. And 3 seats mean we don't have to go to the CCJ to prove that 33 is greater than 32. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Comments, any of our panelists?
I don't know what that speech rather than in relation to the constitutional reform, I wasn't hearing everything because Mr. Rupner was breaking up a little bit. But the constitutional reform process, there was a tremendous amount of proposals which were made and which were enacted. The critical question of shared governance was rejected by both major parties. So we couldn't, the commission itself could not impose shared governance on people. And on the commission itself, there were people who represented the two major political parties. So the majority of members of the commission did not support shared governance. So that was the end of it. You know, what we are advocating, I'm sure David agrees and Ruel agrees with this, what we are advocating is a different form of governance. I wouldn't like to live in a country where, you know, because you have 4 Indians on a board, you must have 4 Africans, ethnic mathematics. I would like to live in such a country. But what we can do is live in a country where the 2 major groups form the government, form the executive. So the issue of ethnic dominance in politics is eliminated. When it's eliminated in politics, you will find, I'm not making a platform speech now, but when it's eliminated in politics, you will find that the ethnic competition at the lower levels is eased and social cohesion becomes easier over time. And that is the kind of society I would like to live in, and the kind of society I would like to create. And I think that that has a lot of support when you talk to people. But because the leaders do not embrace it, and probably will not embrace it for a little while in the future, we just have to keep on working. And politics, as David knows, you know, Ruel knows, you don't achieve something immediately. You just have to keep working.
Correct.
Agreed.
Dr.
You have
Hinds?
reached the voicemail box of 5926.
Dr. Hinds, any comments from you?
Well, no, I completely agree with Ralph on the question of shared governance. In 2011, it was the top platform draw on the APNU campaign. We weren't APNU FC yet. But on that platform, you had Dr. Rupnarayan as the major speaker. And the rest of us, and we were power sharers. And so we were able to inject that on the campaign platform. And the supporters went with it. Because I think at a practical level, African Guyanese understood and still understand that they are an ethnic minority and that the question of power sharing is a safeguard for them. And that's how we pitched it to them, and it was very popular on the platform. But then they win, right? And now they win. It's hard to tell them. They scream at me in the community, David, what you want to share with Jack Dofa? Can he win anything share with you? These are practical difficulties that we have to deal with. And so it's a slow process. It's a very slow process. And that's why I usually say to people, do not dismiss small parties. Because it's small parties who often have the kind of agency to prod the big parties to accept sometimes the small changes that we all credit the big parties for. It wasn't the PNC that pushed their governance on the 2011 platform. And so that's why I'm saying understand the role for newer parties and smaller parties, because often the heavy lifting of change in a society comes from that space. Not big parties. Parties have to be hammered on their head to accept changes.
Comment on the question. Should we reach a point where you separate the electors from the presidential election, like going back to the '66 Constitution, where you vote for separate parliament, vote for the executive as separate from the House, the legislation? Returning to that in a framework where we are now kind of modernizing, going towards spending of our money, enough wealth in the society. Do you think that politics would be more amenable to the population and more disposed towards issues? Because on the financial side, things may get a little better, because a lot of it now, as I see it, the jockeying for position, getting the presidency is the ideal thing, because it helps to garner and distribute the resources for yours, for you and yours. So separating in the first case, and then in a newer society where the economic situation will get better, should that be of a form of recourse and helpful for Guyana, polarized as it is currently? Any comments?
Well, Madam Toure, who is the co-leader of the Carter Center delegation, who we met on Sunday, she said she comes from Senegal. She was a prime minister for a little while. Yeah. And she said that even though the government won 58% of the votes of the elections, which she participated in, they have a petroleum commission that is broadly representative for the entire society, including the opposition. And that is something that we need to have here. And I hope that the government has learned. The PVP, if it wins the election, has been in power for a very long time. And they have had the experience. And I hope they have learned and they would have abolished the arrogance and the haughtiness that characterized much of their activity during the past period in office.
Right.
And I hope that the PNC, the APNU AFC has learned. If they might be government, we don't know the result, but if they're not, that they have learned from the mistakes, and they've learned the necessity for cooperation.
Right. Right. So, gentlemen, I have a question here that was sent to me to ask. And the question is directed to Brian. And of course, others can comment. The question reads as follows. One second. The question basically talking about going back to the situation. Here it is. Yo, please ask this question. If the coalition was to have held elections within the 90 days after the no confidence motion, would there have been a different possible result?
Well, yes, I would like to answer it. Probably there may have been a different result. In fact, at the time of the no confidence motion, I think the coalition was in a very weakened state because some of the arrogance was evident in many of the leaders and the senior personnel, and a lot of their supporters felt very frustrated because they had very little access to many of the senior leaders of the coalition at that time. But I think after the no confidence, they got a wake-up call, and that helped them to speak to some of their supporters and whip up some energy. So I think that helped. If it were held at the time of the no confidence motion, that is my opinion. I don't know if it's correct, but I felt they might have lost.
Okay, gentlemen, any comments on that question?
I don't. They had a little. We had not a little, a major blip in 2011 and 2015 as regards the PPP, because they came out in a minority in 2011. The PPP had been in power for a long time, and they lost the support of sugar workers in 2011 and 2015. So there was a little blip in terms of the ethnic voting pattern, but it has come roaring back. It might have come roaring back in these elections. Ethnic voting patterns are a fixture in Guyana's politics, and we have to somehow work our way around it. And I think that if the elections were held just at the time when the no confidence motion was passed, the results would have been the same as what it would be at these elections. So I think it would be different.
Yeah. I tend to agree with Ralph. What Brian said is very true in terms of the alienation of the base of the coalition from the leaders. It was very, very, very true. Up until this election campaign, there was resistance among supporters. They made very clear they're not voting PPP. What they want were guarantees from the leaders that they wouldn't behave in the way that they behave, but they were very clear about what they were going to do. I just want to make a comment on the question of issues. I think I have noticed, and I've been saying it, and perhaps other commentators are not ready to pick up on it. I think the question of issues was present in these elections, certainly on the side that I am more familiar with. In the sense that people, yes, they're going to vote ethnicity, but they wanted to know from the leaders, how are you going to treat, for example, with poverty among African Guyanese? How are you going to treat with the question of African Guyanese being locked out of the business sector? So there was a way in which there was an entanglement of ethnicity and issues. Again, it was never going to come from the major political party. In fact, I think Ruel said there's a facade of a coalition, and I tend to agree with that. Because you have a coalition, you have a plurality of ideas that was put before that constituency. And I think people are missing that. And if I sound a little bit agitated, because I think we are onto something that our dismissive analysis of ethnic division doesn't allow us to go deep within those ethnic. You heard what Ralph said? They lost the support of sugar workers. And my own view is that if the AFC had behaved differently in government, they would still have had the allegiance of some of those sugar workers. So often we don't pay attention to what happens beneath and within the ethnicity, and we don't take the time often to inject policy within that ethnic framework.
I'm glad you answered that, because the racial politics has been so dominant. It's always at the forefront of everything, subsuming issues. But I'm glad you were able to explain that issues have been addressed or are being addressed.
I know, Dr. Hinds, I think very articulated, Mr. Ramkarran. The question is, and I'm glad you mentioned the AFC. If they had performed well in the coalition, they might have retained the support base they had in 2015. Now, do you blame the AFC for that, or is it they were marginalized by the major players in the coalition, the PNC? And secondly, you spoke of the in opposition, the African Guyanese were saying they want shared governance. And now in government, you said, to hell with that, we don't want to share it. Is it really the mindset of the Guyanese? Because I would also assume that the Indian Guyanese would have wanted shared governance in this coalition. Now that if it's right that a new government is to be formed, what happens after that? Is it just we talk for it just for the purpose of saying it, and when we get opportunity to practice it, we're saying, no, let's not do it now?
Well, it's leadership, you know. It's leadership. Look, if the leadership of the PNC comes out tomorrow for shared governance, African Guyanese will be for it. Leadership. But the leadership on that issue is not going to come from the PNC. Certainly not this leadership that you have there. They feel that the coalition they've gone far, and they've given up some, and I don't think that they are ready to talk in a serious way about power sharing once they are in power. But I think, and this is my argument. Once you have a plural formation, you get the opportunity to inject some ideas there that a major party may not be comfortable with. But if they want to hold on to the coalition, they have to please deal with that. And also, it offers you some opportunity there to speak to a large population from a big platform. And one has to continue doing that. In terms of the question about the AFC, and I want to be fair, because I think the AFC played an important role in terms of bringing about some kind of change in 2011 and 2015. I think the AFC, because it was not a party that came out of the old ideological politics that the PPP and the PNC, the WPA came out of, I think that lack of ideology did not inform the way they operated in government. They're pragmatic, and they dealt with power in a pragmatic, and couldn't understand, right, how you could look after the interest of sugar workers within a government. I mean, that's where your votes come from, and those are the people's who interest you should look after. But it's not the kind of political party that came out of that kind of representational politics. And so as a result, I think they miss. I'm hoping that they've matured now, and they recognize you're never going to implement the policy or whatever you think about the policy of closing down sugar estates and all those kinds of things, whatever economic common sense it makes and all that kind of thing. You are never going to sell that to the Indian Guyanese population in the way it was sold. And it was up to the AFC. It was up to the AFC to bring that wisdom to the coalition. And in my estimation, it didn't do it. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying the nature of the party, the moment in which it emerged was a kind of pragmatic moment where ideology didn't matter much. And I think they're paying the price. They're not paying close attention. And I'm not talking about ideology in the rigid sense. I'm talking about who in the population are you representing? What interests are you representing? Are you representing business? Are you representing these workers who bolted out of their historical home and give you a chance? What do you do about that? I think the AFC really dropped the ball in that regard.
Correct. So,
Dr. Hinds, the
gentlemen,
more I listen to you, the more I realize how great son of Guyana you are, and you should really, I hope whoever from the next government will incorporate you into that administration, because you will do well for people.
Dr. Hinds, how much you paid him?
So, gentlemen, let's come back to the issue of the election. So, because a few of the viewers who might have joined us late have sent a number of questions inbox to me to ask. Just to give viewers an update, so we have no update for you in terms of the official declaration of results, other than what you would have heard already, the partial result from GECOM that came out around middle of today. We are now awaiting the results, which is expected by mid of tomorrow. We are certainly hoping that by mid of tomorrow we'll have a declaration of the results of today's polls. I must say to you all, because you have all heard this, there are a number of fake news going around. Please do not heed fake news. Please, you can tune in to the reputable media houses, Stabrook News being one of them, of course, the Marara Waves and Globespan being others, where you can get numbers that would have been released. It is true that on this program we related, and let me say we related, that the PPP, Dr. Jagde would have said that the PPP has an unassailable lead. But in saying that, the PNC, well, the APNU AFC have also come out and said that they believe they have a majority of seats in Parliament. So we are now still awaiting an official declaration. So let me repeat to our viewers out there, we do not have an official declaration. To the other viewer that inboxed me about 3 times with regards to the video that has been circulating with what seems to purportedly be a number of GECOM officers or personnel or whoever they are at, I believe, that building that is obliquely opposite Parliament. And they seem to be fiddling with some envelopes that has SOPs, purportedly has SOPs. Please, our panelists can educate us further, especially Senior, who has been part of GECOM process in the past, but it is believed, and I know that at this stage nobody can change a statement of poll, and they cannot, mischief will always be attempted, and that's human right and nature, but copies of official statement of polls are with returning officers, deputy returning officers, the PPPC, APNU, AFC, and the smaller parties. They have legitimate copies of polls. So at this stage, whatever you are seeing, please do not pay much heed to it and let it not cause us anxiety in the society. Gentlemen, Senior, what is your comment on that? You have been part of GECOM.
Sent me the clip, and when I looked at it, I couldn't understand why the clip was sent to me. There were obviously people who were going about their business, milling about, doing this, that, and the other, and there was this lady opening the taking off the seal from the envelopes. The envelopes were pasted with Scotch tape, broad Scotch tape. All she was doing was taking off the Scotch tape from some of the envelope. She wasn't doing anything with the envelope. She was doing it very gingerly and pausing from time to time. I just took off. I thought somebody sent the thing to me to see some skullduggery going on. I didn't. I just turned up halfway. I mean, it's really ridiculous. Absolutely nothing was going on.
And Senior, at this point in time, I mean, the integrity of the statement of polls are beyond any personal tampering, isn't it?
They have PPP, APNU, AFC. They even have some of ANUG's agents who are watching the counting. They're looking at they have the right to examine the seals. The returning officer is supposed to break the seal for everybody to see, take out the document, and call the results. Anybody can inspect the document. So it's absolutely ridiculous to contend that something is going wrong.
Okay. Thank you. Gentlemen, any other questions from you? We're going to be wrapping up in a couple of minutes. And tomorrow night, of course, to our viewers out there, tomorrow night we return with our panel to have a discussion. Hopefully tomorrow night we'll know who is the clear winner of the elections 2020 in Guyana. As we say good night to all of you, let me go around our table. Let me ask Senior first for your comments as we say good night to our viewers.
Thank you very much. It's very vital at this time for people to maintain the peace, maintain the calm, maintain the peace. Somebody will win, somebody will lose. That's the nature of our politics. I wish it weren't so, but that's the reality. And we should all maintain the calm. And I call upon GECOM to issue results early. I call upon parties who know to not to antagonize, not to do anything to raise tension, and so on. And most important, the people of Guyana. It's difficult to lose the elections, whoever loses, but
Correct.
We have to maintain calm and then and move on with our business.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me go around. Let me go, Brian, Mr. Brian Collison, your comments, please.
All right, I share some of Senior Counsel's concern, and I'm calling on all Guyanese not to be used, by political forces to cause any destruction and mayhem in the society. We have so far a peaceful election, and I think the results should be accepted by all parties, and I hope all the mature individuals and leaders stop sharing fake news, especially if they know that it is fake.
All right. Mr. Leland.
Cleveland.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Cleveland, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Peace and calm, Guyanese, and let's wait on GECOM for the official results.
All right.
Refrain from the excitement while you wait, and also from fake news. It only ginger up the situation. Let's refrain from that and wait for the official thing. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dr. Hinds, I want to call on you, but I want to tell you something before you make your final comment. I would like to invite you and my good brother Lincoln Lewis to a future show for us to discuss, have some good discussion on this show, and maybe Senior can join us too. But Dr. Hinds, your closing comments.
Yeah, I have to join the other panelists in calling for calm and to try as much as possible not to take us into that area where violence could erupt. I mean, we've been through that so many times, and we see how long it takes to really get rid of those wounds. So I know how important these elections are. I know how people's emotions are wrapped into it. But at the end of the day, we have to have elections. And the rules that we agreed to before the elections. And so we have to find a way to restrain ourselves from going to the edge again.
Thank you. Thank you. My brother Charles.
I am so impressed this evening to hear the level-headedness of Dr. Hinds and Mr. Ramkarran and the others who came on tonight. My only wish was that we would have had a leader from the PPP and maybe the chairman of APNO. I'm sure the president maybe might not be available, but someone in that category could have come on our program to also give the reassurance to the Guyanese people to be calm, to wait for GECOM to declare the results, and to ensure that whoever is the winner, as Dr. Hinds said in the beginning, there is really no winner or loser. It should be a win-win situation. Okay. Because we're looking at a government that should govern all of Guyana, not a government that will govern only their supporters. And if we can have that kind of maturity in our leadership in the political sphere, I think Guyana bodes well. And I'm so elated tonight to listen to the voices of men like Dr. Hinds and Mr. Ramkarran and the others to give us that assurance that let's wait. We know that GECOM is taking its time, maybe too long sometime, but let's wait. patience is virtue, and virtue can bring the best out of us. We don't want to have the worst in us, because in a mob reaction, in a mob situation, we do things that is not normal in our demeanor. So I'm appealing to all Guyanese. Please be calm, be patient, and the results will be known. And whoever the next president is will be sworn into government. And we're hoping that that new president will govern Guyana for all Guyanese. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And my brother Charles, to our viewers out there, let me just say just a word insert here. We did invite persons from both APNO and the PPP. To their credit, I believe that their reasons for not wanting to come on, I would support that. Like, for example, Brother Anand Nandalal said he would prefer to wait until GECOM releases the official statistics, because then he would be in a position of relying on official statistics rather than his party's own. Of course, he deferred to his party leader making whatever necessary statement. At the same time, on the APNU side, I've spoken to two persons, they're senior persons too, who basically said the same thing, and I couldn't disagree with them. Brother Dr. Rose, your final comment.
I echo the sentiments of all my panelists here. Dr. Hinds, Mr. Ramkarran, both of you are voices of reason, and that's very, very good. I think Guyana needs both of you. But at the same time, let me take this opportunity. I just got something piped to me from GECOM, direct from GECOM. Results. Region 1, won by the PEP. Region 2, won by the PEP. Region 3, won by the PEP. Region 8, won by APNU. Region 9, won by the PEP. Region 10, won by APNU. So the GECOM is making progress as we speak. These are 6 regions they released the results from. Came direct from GECOM.
Okay.
So.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I must say that, tomorrow night, Dr. Hinds, if you don't mind joining us again, because we want to do so, and Dr. Rose, you too, we want to do some more analysis, because traditionally, what is seen by the parties is that APNO's Linden support equates PPP's Burby support. So in their thinking, this is how the politicians look at the numbers rolling in and say, okay, this is going to give for that one. And at the end of the day, it comes to the big one, Region 4, right? Which is the biggest. So tomorrow we'll take the discussion further. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Oh, I got another one. Region 5, won by the PEP. Region 6, won by the PEP. So GECOM is making progress.
Good. And we'll continue to
this
take
came
your
direct
side.
from GECOM. Pipe direct to me from GECOM. My contact there, pipe it direct to me.
Good.
The numbers are there. I have the numbers here, but I won't read them out because, it takes time for each party.
But thank you for that, Dr. Rose. And gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight and supporting this Elections Watch in Guyana. To our viewers out there, do have a good night. Stay home. The next day or two, let's just be very, very sensible in what we do and what we say. I would like to encourage, let's go to school, let's go to work, let's just make this country continue working, regardless of what happened politically. Let's carry on with our lives with integrity and with intent as good Guyanese citizens. Have a wonderful night, viewers.
Before you go up, sorry to stop you.
Sure.
We want to thank our audience here in the studio here in Queens, that they came out to support this process. And again, to thank Noir Singh for providing meals for us. You guys in Guyana have no meals. We have meals here in Queens. And we want to thank Devin also for a great job doing what he's doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Dr. Hinds and Sina, I'll have to talk more. Gentlemen, good night. Viewers, good night. Thank you. Globespan, Devin, Sue, good night.
We come cross the Caribbean Sea, mother, father, picnic, and we settle down in GT. We bend down on the coastal plain, the hot sun and pouring rain, and we planting the rice and cane. Yes, we take off the boots and we put down the roots. So the crab would that grow in Essequibo